I want to make sure that we talk about this, which is the mother and the father wound, both in men and women, and then the archetypes that can be brought forth from healing or the maturity of that wound. You've talked about safety for women, and I could not agree with you more. Healing for a woman, even at the, even if you're just thinking about, you're at the stage of like, I think I need to change my diet. Right? We're not ready yet for this, for maybe not even this conversation, but a woman cannot heal if she does not feel safe. If she is in that sympathetic physiology that you've been describing, this fight, flight, freeze physiology, there's no way that she can digest, procreate, play, get in her body.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the father wound in the woman, in the female, and certainly if you can touch on father wounding in men. And then I'd like to talk about the mother wound, which seems to cut, I don't know if maybe at least for me, it cuts a little deeper. So I feel like the mother wound cuts a little deeper for me, but maybe we can talk about mother wounding in men and women as well.
Yeah, sure. I want to mention something because I could almost feel the objection, and maybe it's the projection, but in my body when we were talking about, when you were talking about honoring this man that you procreated with, and I could almost feel the objection that was well, but what about rape, right? Or what about right. If there was an unconsensual or incest or something horrible and you had this baby. I still believe that, and arguably, right, that is a life path that is an even more advanced mastery, right? It's an even deeper calling to arrive at the place where there's no mistakes in your story, right? Where actually every single thing that happens in your life is an experience that affords you access to new experiences, to different experiences. And perhaps we came here for just that, right? So if you choose, right, because we're in this choice-based world, aren't we? If you choose to have that child, right, can you get to a place where you honor whatever circumstances, whether you claim responsibility for any of the micro choices that led up to that or not, where you honor whatever circumstances led you to the procreation resulting in this child? Can you make peace with that and honor that? Because if you don't, that child is walking around with the narrative from birth that they are unwanted, that they're a mistake, that they are a product of violation, right? That's just the most exaggerated expression of the wound most of us are walking around with, which is that you're broken, damaged, and unlovable, okay? So to put that in neon lights on your child may feel like you get to be the heroine in the story and the villain is excised, tossed off. Well, I am a passionate practitioner and believer in family constellation therapy. And one of the most powerful things that pulls on the spider web of your lifescape is the excluded party, the perpetrator. In family constellation, the perpetrator is as much a part of your system as your aunt or uncle. Okay? When you are perpetrated upon, that individual is a part of your system, and there is a psychospiritual perspective that says they are actually needed to catalyze systemic changes that would otherwise not be available to the system. That these villains, these evil people, sometimes these criminals, actually are serving the meta of the system that we came here to experience. That's my belief. I know that's a very fucking hot take. And I think that if it affords even one woman who's experienced that kind of violation that resulted in a child the opportunity to just sit quietly with the possibility of frame shifting a perspective so that that man can be included, can be offered belonging. There's actually a healing offered not just to that child, but to her and literally to her entire system and potentially the collective. So that's my PSA on that. And, when it comes to the father and mother woundology. There are so many different interpretations of what that even means. There's a lot of like blurring and blending. And I have a very pragmatic mind, and I like things to be simple and organized into like charts and columns and
Algorithms.
yeah,
Algorithms.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a product of MIT after all. But I want it to be clear and lucid and simple, right? And I haven't found the breakdown of the many different patterns and psychological defenses that we call our personalities to be like quite that discrete, However, what I like to think about the mother wound and the father wound as is a very distilled phrase for each, right? So that the mother wound is, I am not loved, right? In its immature expression, in its juvenile expression, in its childhood expression. The maturation of that is the acceptance that you couldn't possibly have been loved. Like that your mother literally couldn't. And in that maturation comes approval and true acceptance. Right? Again, my constellation teacher, Amarly Centeno, would say, you take your mother. The taking of the mother means that you see that not only could she offer you exactly what she offered you, and only that, right? But you also see that she was the perfect mother for you. For all these reasons I just touched on when we were talking about, these crises of violation, that she was the perfect mother for you. Why? How? How is it that what you value most perhaps about yourself was a direct result of how fucked up she was, right? Or how wonderful and majestic she was, right? Whatever your narrative is, okay? So the father wound is very simply what we've been referencing most of this conversation, which is, I am unsafe in this home, in this reality. I am unsafe. This is an unguarded realm. Nobody's fucking home, okay, to keep me safe. And that could be something that you experience literally, that your father himself is a perpetrator, or it could be dynamically because of how you experienced your mom's body around him, right? And co-regulated to her system that he did not contain, right? Or it could be because he was absent or negligent and just like not there, right? So the maturation of that is to recognize that safety wasn't available to him. Of course, he couldn't self-contain, so of course he can't contain you or your mom.
There was no capacity.
No.
Yeah.
Right? A man who cannot contain his own system cannot possibly offer that containment. That's why if you go out on a first date with a man and you see him fidgeting and you feel him, sort of like frenetic in his system, that is the ultimate red flag. It's the ultimate, right? Because a man who is still in his body, who is present and attentive and allows your system, your animal system, okay, to exhale. He may not meet your preferences. He may not be, 6'4" with green eyes. And your system will tell you. Because he can love the shit out of you. But if his system is like, he cannot offer you what your system seeks. Okay. So
And I think it's also, if I can put in some color here as well, you had mentioned before when in your celibacy journey that you were like, oh my God, this is so boring. I think that there can also be a tendency, if we are not okay and we are not attuned to our own needs, being our own, let's say, father, our inner masculine, as you talk about, we can also perceive that man as boring.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So this is exactly, where I was going to go, which is the relational consequences of mother and father woundology, right? Because you can bring your mother wound to your relationship with a man for sure, right? And if it's like a real BOGO trauma bond, you're going to bring both your perfect mother wound fit and both your perfect father wound fit, and you're going to have a field day. And the consequences are in the realm of what psychobiologists call neuroception, right? They're in the realm of what you perceive and how you perceive it. And you can't actually see it differently. So it's like, I usually say, like, if there's a pile of laundry in your dimly lit bedroom positioned just so on the chair, and you just watched a horror movie on TV, and you wake up a little bit at night and you look over there and you're like, right? There's an intruder in my room, right? There's a whole cascade of biology that's going to be unlocked to prepare you to meet this imagined reality. If you have reclaimed, as I like to say, your neuroception, you will see, oh, it's a pile of laundry, and you'll remain chill. Okay, but that reclamation process, so that you can see with sober eyes what's actually in front of you and interact with what is actually in front of you, instead of idealizing and seeing the hot hero where there's really a goblin, right? Or vilifying and seeing, the bad, horrible mommy or daddy where there's actually just a person doing their damn thing. That reclamation, as far as I have studied and experienced, it requires an initiation of your own inner masculine. So when I use these masculine, feminine terminology, I know it's not for everybody. For me, again, the binary is extremely helpful. And my teacher, I mentioned earlier, Omar Pani, he's like, it's when you use the term inner masculine, like, you don't know what a masculine body feels like. Stop using that term. And I completely agree. I totally get that. I have no idea, and never will, from birth to death, what a man's body feels like. Okay, I will not know that. I don't know what masculine energy feels like. What I am talking about is really just terminology to invoke the yang principle of this inner polarity that has been referenced, by many before me. And that initiation from the immature to the mature masculine is simply the taking of radical responsibility for my system and sending my system a sufficient enough signal of safety so that I start to actually believe that I'm okay. I don't believe, in my experience, that you can meditate your way into that you can plant medicine your way into that you can fast your way into that. I'm extremely biased because I have I have a health protocol that I have operationalized for almost a decade now for women. It's called Vital, and otherwise it's called Vital Mind Reset. That seems to do the job in 6 weeks. Okay. And why is this different than just doing a hard thing, a hard, scary thing, and taking responsibility for, your health and wellness in this way? I think a lot of it has to do with coming at your own self-care from this 360-degree perspective of, this is my number one priority for this month. And also a good amount of defragging of the programming, right? So obviously, this kind of conversation that we're having today is not for everyone. It's for, people who are really interested in taking that level of responsibility for themselves, which means that your energy is now yours to hold, to manage, to honor. And it also means that you don't really get to blame and defend yourself and finger point and prove to somebody without watching yourself do it ever again. Okay? It's a whole different lifestyle. It means your friendships are going to change, your dynamics with your family are going to change, your relationship to what seemed like, the most important things in your life is going to change. Okay? So this initiation is psychobiological. And when you have enough safety in your system, you'll start to feel the intuitive inner guidance about what is next for you. And managing the terrain of that post-initiatory space is something that, again, before I wrote, Reclaim Woman and I developed its companion program, I would just watch everybody get divorced. That's just what happened after people found their power again and stepped into this place. And now I have obviously a much larger set of tools that are relational in nature so that you can feel supported in navigating that post-initiatory realm. So that sort of masculine initiation that allows you to, what I call self-husband, and to show up for yourself emotionally so that in these dynamic experiences that you have with your partner, with your children, in the entrepreneurial space, you are not making decisions from your little girl or from your maiden archetype, right? Where you are making the decisions that serve your mature, action-oriented inner husband, right? That serve both your emotional realms and your awareness and consciousness realms. It takes practice. And it takes, I think, a good amount of contact with like-minded community to confer that sense of belonging where otherwise you would have an existential terror that you're going to be abandoned, right? And left on the side of the road if you start to practice this level of acknowledgement of your vulnerability as a woman.
God, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. And I think, as you were talking, what I was thinking, and this just might be me being judgy McJudgy, but I think you can't do any of this. This is you need to expand your capacity in order to do this. And as you were saying, let some of the things that you think were the most important things in your life surrender to the idea that they may not be after this breaking or this rupture. And I don't think that you can do that if you haven't mastered, you talk about the Vital Mind Reset program, and certainly there's so many synergies in terms of what you're talking about and what I like to talk about, which is you have to start with yourself first. Like the diet, you have to sort of reduce some of that systemic inflammation. You have to be moving to some degree, like there has to be a movement program in place. There has to be sunlight. At the time of this recording, I'm just recently back from Vegas. I was at a medical conference there, and I literally don't think I saw sunlight for 2 days because I was in the hotel.
Classic medical conference.
I know, right. And I was like, how is this
food.
A longevity conference with burgers and fries everywhere? But side note. But I do think it really you have to be able to expand your reserve and your capacity through doing programs like the Vital Mind Reset or, just working on your nutrition. Like, can we just have whole foods? Can we just do something really simple? Like, can I have whole foods for a month and see how that might change my capacity, my stress tolerance, my sleep, all of these just basic physiological responses. And you've talked about this throughout, I think, the entirety of your career in that, being someone who was prescribing psychotropic medication, later on discovering that, some of these things, this, maybe it was PMDD or, whatever it was, were like vitamin deficiencies, right? Like it was cyclical. It happened every time, like fourth week of the cycle, I remember you telling a story can't remember if it was with me or it was someone I might have been watching you on a podcast. She thought that there was like a string in her cheek or something. There was like, she was gnawing on her cheek. And it was like, oh, this is like and then, after working with her you realize that it was a vitamin deficiency. I think it was B12, might have been B12, which is likely, but yeah.
Yeah, these physiologic imbalances, they are like almost like little flags, little signposts of wrong living and misattunement. I in my protocol and actually in my life, I'm not a huge like supplement girly, and I know for me it was like almost impossible to get beyond the energy of taking a supplement that says like fix yourself body, do differently body, like stop this. And so a lot of the orientation that I have when it comes to health reclamation is to work with what you're doing every day. Okay, you're opening the fridge, right? You're pouring the laundry detergent and just cleaning that up so that, again, this signal. Because, my mentor is Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez. Maybe you know of him. And I remember, I'll never forget, we were on the sidewalk in New York one day, and I was like deep in the functional medicine training world, okay? And I was like, I'm so confused. Like I'm learning about like inflammation, but then I'm also learning about hormones and nutrient deficiencies. And like, how do you know like where to focus with a patient? There could be so many different drivers of what it is that we're seeing. And he said, well, there's the top 5 most important things to consider are the autonomic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. He said it 5 times. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was how
every chiropractor's like, yes, say it again, doc.
I'm literally like a chiropractor in disguise.
Yeah.
But I have observed this to be the case, right? Because like, for example, the diet that I recommend in Vital Mind Reset, it's like, there's nothing like radical or revolutionary about it. And in many ways, it's less restrictive than a lot of what the women, coming to me, especially if they were vegan or vegetarian or on a GAPS diet or some kind of special SIBO protocol or whatever, that they were already on. Yeah. So then how can I explain like pretty predictable optimization of weight, including, potential weight loss, pretty predictable shifts in tolerance of foods that seemed otherwise on the naughty list. And it has to do with, again, this autonomic nervous system stabilization, which I like to think is a result of the meta showing up for yourself, but not from the energy of, that victim triangle, like assault on yourself through wellness. Yeah. And it's why I'm not a big biohacker.
I hate that word. Yeah. I'm very sensitive to words, but like I would never want a hack. I don't want anyone to hack anything. I want, you got to do the work. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also like, if the goal is to get on your own team, then that means that the result is going to be felt when nothing that your body is doing is a problem, right? You're waking up every night at 3 a.m. How can you literally however you get there, do it. But get to the place where it's not a problem that you're waking up at 3 a.m. And you can feel curious about it. Like, and this is also why I love German New Medicine, because it's one of the many modalities that offers a framework for that curiosity, where you're interacting with symptoms, whether it's flu symptoms or like a lump in your breast, with a very different framework of curiosity around what the body is actually doing. And usually the answer is it's already healing, right? It's already fixing up whatever your perception was driving in terms of biological necessity. So the perception piece, is a natural result of no longer believing in chemical imbalance theory, cholesterol theory, cancer mutation theory, germ theory, no longer believing in all of these victim consciousness predicated theories of human health and illness. When you shift out of that, when you jailbreak that, it's actually like quite easy to chill about whatever your body is doing. And that's not to say that like, scary things don't happen in your body. It just means that now You have the capacity to self-contain, to hold that fear, to relate to it, and you don't allow it to drive, your behavioral decisions. But I do think that this requires a certain kind of breaking of a spell, that has been cast.
Yes.